Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show we have reports and some tips for you from Jarrett McCarthy down at Hayward Bait and Bottle, and then we talk spring fishing and a lot more with Hayward Area Fishing Guide Tim Duffy. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
Get ready to ride. Hayward Power Sports has 2023 Polaris off-road vehicles in stock and ready for action. Plus, during the Polaris Spring Do More sales event, there are even generous incentives offered for the first time in years. Adrenaline junkies, feel the unbridled freedom of the pure speed and power with a Polaris RZR 1000 XP Ultimate offering a rebate of $3,000. Or do you need a side-by-side at a true workhorse? Then the Polaris Ranger 1000 Premium is it and comes with a $1,500 rebate. Hayward Power Sports even has the machine that started it all, the Polaris Sportsman ATV with a $500 rebate on select models. And don't forget, we can help customize your machine to match how you use it. The options are endless, from a winch, plow, cab, heater or AC, to racks, gun scabbards, track kits, and more. These are all brand new 2023 models and stock is limited. Don't miss out. Come see us at Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
For complete program details, see Hayward Power Sports. Always wear a helmet, never drink and ride.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray, bake down, draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service, the clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom-cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward. We're recording this week down at Hayward Bait and Bottle again and talking to Jarrett McCarthy. And Jarrett, well, we're finally into the fishing season, and it started off with, not, it depends on the reports. The reports are good, bad, indifferent, typical opener.
Yeah, it was. We got some really cold water still. I was out myself and I saw water temps anywhere from 44 to 49 out there. Some reports that came back of pictures of some really nice walleyes, and other places I was hearing, didn't see a whole lot, didn't get a whole lot of hits. It really varied on where you were and what you were doing out there.
And I saw water temperatures, all the way. I saw 54 degrees, which was the second day of the fishing season open, but that was on a shallower lake. But then I heard a lot of the fish were really holding, what I saw too, they were really holding tight to bottom.
Yeah, and that's what I saw for the most part too, and what we've been hearing all weekend or what have you. A lot of guys are trying to fish the bottom, so I was marking fish that were holding really tight to bottom, and it was really hard to get a move. With walleyes and bass or what have you, we were finding crappies that were suspended still.
I did see some reports that some guys got some really nice crappie stringers out of some lakes too, though. But that if you find them, you can catch them. Probably just finding them at this time of the year.
Yeah, finding them is the problem with a lot of fish right now. It's so different because usually by this time we've got a little bit warmer waters, and those fish have started to move up shallow. But because we just had ice out, between this year and last year, a lot of those fish are, those crappies could still be spread out over the basin, or some of those bass could still be out on those deep rock pilings. So we're kind of caught in between with some of this cooler water. So hopefully over the next couple of weeks we see some sunlight and some warmth that'll kind of bring things back into the pattern that we're used to seeing.
And as usual, the river systems, the river lakes were better. There's a lot of water moving through the rivers, but the guys that did fish the rivers, I had good reports from them. And the lakes, the flowages, they were actually pretty good, a little bit better than deep, clear lakes.
Yeah, that was one of the nice things to see with water level this year. It looks like a lot of places are almost at or at normal water level, so that'll be good for fishing for the summer. But yeah, rivers are doing pretty well, and then lakes, all over the place.
What temperature do you think is going to be the key? I know with crappies, it seems to be right around the 60 degrees. They'll start to move shallow.
So, It depends on your lake again, because I've seen crappies move shallow a lot sooner. I've seen bluegills move shallow a lot sooner. Just depends on the weather. You get a couple nice sunny days and they'll all scoot up into the shallows, and then you get a couple cold nights and they'll all scoot back out. It's really weather dependent, because that weather, that sunlight and those cool nights or whatever, that's also affecting the water temperature. So you just kind of have a feel for what's going on day by day to be able to get on those fish. If you get 3 days that's, cold and raining outside, I'm sure a lot of those fish are going to scoot out. But if you get 3 days of sun piled on top of each other, get out there and start patrolling the shallows.
Whether you're after walleyes or crappies or anything, it seems like the areas that are not too far from where they have spawned or will spawn are areas that they'll be in. If they're deeper, they're going to be close to those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you're looking for crappies this time of year, start looking at those shorelines. Where are those pencil reeds? Where are those weed flats that those fish are going to be moving up onto to stage and or to spawn? Because that's probably where a lot of those fish are headed. Same deal with the bass.
You mentioned bass. Have you heard much on the bass fishing, especially at smallmouth?
We really didn't. We didn't hear much of anything for bass over the weekend. Most of what we saw was walleye, northern, and crappie out there.
And pike, you heard much on the pike fishing?
Haven't heard much on the pike fishing. I know that a lot of guys that are going to be out looking for pike right now, they're going to be looking in those back muddy bays that warm up the fastest, because they'll be back there sunning themselves as soon as they get the chance.
You heard anything on trout at all? I know the rivers are running pretty hot right now as far as the water moving through them, but I know some guys have been out trout fishing.
Yeah, there's been a couple guys out trout fishing, myself included. Got a couple nice brookies on Saturday. They're out there, just having the patience to look for them. It's different when the water is low, because they have fewer spots to go sip a while the water is running high. The river is kind of wide open for them, so definitely a lot less spots to zone in on.
And down here at the shop, I know you guys are all geared up with all the stuff. You got a lot of new stuff with plastics, and we talking about things like drop shotting and fishing plastics and stuff different ways. There's some really cool plastics out there just made for drop shotting and for different purposes, other presentations.
Absolutely, there's so many plastics out there right now, and if you are someone who likes to go out there with crappie minnows and fatheads or what have you, great. It's a awesome confidence
bait. You got
bait
them too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's great to have confidence bait like live bait in the boat or what have you. But if you haven't tried plastics or you're new to fishing or what have you, definitely stop on by. Let us show you a couple different techniques, because when I was younger, going from live bait to plastics, I was really, really hesitant because live bait works so well, and now it always seems like I've got more plastics in the boat than I do live bait, because I think they work better now. But that's after you learn the technique and you have the patience to try it. But you got to have a good teacher for it. So definitely stop on by and ask us questions.
Jarrett, I want to thank you for taking the time here with our audience.
Yep. Thanks for having me again, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that bring this show to you every week. When we come back, we'll be talking to Hayward Area Fishing Guide Tim Duffy. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop for the Hayward area's largest selection of rods, reels, lures, fishing electronics, boating supplies, and much more. Whether you fish for bass, walleyes, panfish, or muskies, at Hayward Bait and Bottle you'll find everything you'll need for a successful season. Check out their huge selection of muskie baits, and again this year, they've expanded their selection of soft plastic bass and walleye baits. In the bottle shop, you'll find a full selection of beer and liquor. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Make the deal of a lifetime on a new Lund from Hayward Power Sports. Save over $21,000 on a fully loaded 1975 Pro V Sport. Or we've discounted the 2075 Pro V Sport Limited over $34,000. We have remaining 2022s and the brand new 2023 Lunds are here with more arriving weekly. From the 1650 Angler SS that's ideal for fishing small bodies of water, all the way to the 1875 Impact XS that's perfect for family fishing for up to 6 people. Get your new Lund today at Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, we often have different fishing guides on here to give you some great tips and talk about the fishing. One of the guides that we haven't had on here for quite some time now is Hayward Area Fishing Guide Tim Duffy. I had a chance to talk to him the other day about spring fishing and a lot more.
Well, Tim, I know, when we're talking about the fishing out there, you like to fish slip bobbers a lot. And one of the things that you actually learned from you is that, you don't just fish a hook on a slip bobber or a plain jig. A lot of times you're fishing something like a jig with a spinner on it.
Once I started doing the jig on the bobber, and I listened to your show with Chuck Roll, he had a good point about, I don't know if you or him, one of them, about those fish, they don't swallow the dang hook all the way down their gut.
Yeah.
With a single hook,
they will.
They'll swallow it.
Yeah.
With a jig, they're still eating it, but you don't have to be killing the fish if you're going to throw them back or whatever. You tend to have good hookups with the jig. But more so than that is, when I slip bobber fish, let's say you got your sinker a foot up or whatever from the hook, and you throw it out there, well, it's helicoptering down, and a lot of times they tangle when they're going down with the split shot and a hook.
Yep.
Not always, but chances are pretty good that there's going to be a tangle or something, especially if you got leeches on there, because if they're swimming, they tend to tangle. But with the jig, the jig goes first. It's always a good, consistent, no tangle cast. But the other thing is you got the attractant there. I watched this guy fishing years ago, and he was using a silver clasp or a clip to put his hook on. I said, because we brought up that doesn't work. It's too much junk or whatever. Well, that silver swivel was almost an attractant on the thing. So it makes you thinking a little bit different than you would normally think. Yeah. But, talking about the jigs, good no tangle casting, it's an attractant. It puts the bait right where you want it to be, rather than if the sinker's up here and people can say like, well, it's not swimming around. So I call it slow rolling. You call it something else. Slip dragging. So here, like you said, when I'm guiding or fishing in the boat, me and you fish together a million times. So it's like casting around the boat. You fan cast that boat, and then once you've done that, but we're casting. And as soon as that bobber stands up, I'm just slowly reeling it. And I bet you 90% of the time, they'll hit that bobber, and you're not cranking fast where it's up off the bottom. You're just slowly cranking that in so it kind of stays put, but it's moving. And you can actually see the fish when it hits it, the bobber jolts, and then down it goes. But the other thing is you're covering water. So if you're out there on a stump flat or whatever, fish cribs, you're covering water to find out where they are, and then once you find out by casting, you can move there, and you got your side imaging and stuff where you can probably see them anyhow, but still, casting, you're covering areas to find out. Sometimes it's just one stump, and they tell everybody, cast towards that one stump, because there's a ton of fish piled up around it. Sometimes they're all around the boat. But by doing that, we're checking out all the water, and then I'll let it settle once in a while if I'm going to do something or whatever for a couple seconds. But it does not sit there, only if you got a windy day where it's really blowing or something. A lot of times I'll cast, and you got the wave action, and it's moving, and I'll let it go. But at the same, when you do that, you have to make sure that you're taking up your slack. A lot of guys don't take up the slack. Then the bobber goes down, and they set the hook, and they got this big bow in their line. But having that thing move is like night and day, especially on calm days. And that works for crappies, walleyes, just about everything. And, you mentioned too about, the jigs with the spinner blades on them. I actually, from the spring to when we start going into the fall, when we're fishing in the deep, deep water, 30 feet plus, I'll go with the jig, the spinner blade, but a bead chamber on there. But the more things that you can have to help them find the bait helps you catch more fish. And compared to a plain jig or one with the spinner blade and the bead chamber in the fall, it's like night and day. Nolte, the guy I fished with one time, goes, "What, do we need this?" And he ripped it off. I said, "Now you just pulled the blade off the thing and it's ruined." I said, "Go ahead and fish with that then if you want." And me and his buddy are catching fish like crazy, and he ain't getting nothing. Because that deep water is dark down there, and they need to find the bait.
You were talking about moving that bait too. It's slow. Yeah, the other way is you can move it in little pulls, little spurts as you bring it back to the boat. Because I've actually watched that on live sonar, and you can see the jig go up just like you're jigging it. It goes down to the depth you had it set at, and it jigs up. I watched fish come in on it doing that.
So I like to do the slow roll. Everybody's got their own technique, but I've seen guys get in the boat. They don't know how to do the slow roll, so they're like just snapping it, and the jig's so it's sliding up. The jig's going up, and then it's twirling back down again, and it's going up, and they're still, and they got to move it though when they're snap because it's like jigging with a bobber.
Yeah.
So that quick thing. So most of the time, those fish are going to hit it when it's falling.
Yep.
So when I don't really do it that way because I use more just the subtle movement thing. But I've seen guys do the, just give it a little snap and then the jig comes up if you watch it, and then it'll flutter back down again. And then, but they got to be taking the slack in while they're doing that, just like if you were jigging without a bobber. You jig and then you crank in the line. So that method could actually work really good to trigger a fish if they were not very active.
A couple other things when it comes to slip bobbers too is that a lot of people don't take the time to precisely adjust your depth the way they should. They just estimate the depth, and a lot of times you're better off being higher over the fish than you are under the fish, but still you want that depth and take the time to properly do it.
So I listened to the other show, you were talking about the fishing guide about whatever kind of fishing when they're up off the bottom.
Yep.
And I usually have that happen later in the season, but I mean, you never know. So if you're not catching fish and you know the fish are there, you got to try just about everything. So yes, I set that thing with the ice weight, every one of them. I put an ice weight on there, I drop it down, and I'll start off, if there's wood down there, whatever, I start off with maybe very seldom do I do the 1 foot thing, but if it's in the spring like down, it's cold water, a lot of times they're down near the bottom. I'll do that, but I'm constantly changing that depth, and I want everybody's pole set up the same way, the same depth where we're catching those fish at. But sometimes I'll be lifting that knot so I'm 3 feet off the bottom, and when that water gets to be 60, 65, the best is 66, 67, 68, 69. Once you get to 70, that's warm, but that's 67, 68, 69. We'll catch those fish on slip bobbers, and we're in 15, 16, 17 foot of water, and I'm fishing those things 5 feet from the top, 5 feet down. So they're up high.
Yep.
And if you're down, there's a lot of distance between the bait and the bottom. And if you're down there, you're not going to get them. So we've done this long enough that, and I know I'll go out on some of the Clearwater lakes in the middle of the day, trolling a shad wrap over the weeds, which only go down, on a short cast, only go down probably 6 feet, if that. Then we'll regulate our distance of how far we're casting, and we'll just troll behind the boat and catch those walleyes right over the top of the weeds. But they're still 5 to 6 feet down, and then we still do the slow roll thing. And these are on Clearwater lakes, and I'm not using no boards, I'm not nothing fancy, and we'll just keep going around and around in those areas and hammer the fish. But setting that depth thing is really important.
The other thing about slip bobbers too is I see a lot of people, they just don't set the hook right. The first thing they do is grab it and jerk on it. You got to tighten that line up and straighten the line out before you set the hook, or you're just setting the bobber, you're not setting the hook.
Me and you have done quite a few fishing ventures together, and that one time we did the one on Moose Lake and we were using the big long, what were they, 9-footers or whatever, because they're nice poles for the slip bobbers. But when that bobber goes down, and you got to be on your game kind of, you can't sit there and have the pole sitting here drinking a cup of coffee and then go over there and grab it. The first thing I do is I lift the pole up, and it lifts the line out of the water so I can take the line back without pulling on the bobber. So I lift that pole up and I get that line in. Then I following the pole down to the water so that when I go to set, now I'm straight to that bobber. Well, actually not, because you go to the bobber, then you can still go down from the bobber. You know what I mean? So that's why it makes it even tougher.
Well, what I tend to tell people more than anything else is you just start cranking until that line starts to straighten out, and then lift your rod up. Point your rod at the bobber and crank and tighten the line up somewhat, and then lift up. And longer rods are way better for that. Very nice. Like I said, you lift the pole up, and I like to lift the line out of the water, depending if it's a windy day or how much bow you have in the line. I see more and more people do that. So even if they got just a little bit of a bow in that line, and they set, you're only getting probably a half of the set, and the strongest part of that set is right there. Once you pull this over your head, you're on the tail end of your set. So if they're setting for slack, then getting some tension at the back of that's the weakest part of the set. But the other thing with those, if you're jigging,
you're straight to the jig. So when you set, it's straight on.
Right.
And your line's straight. Slip bobber, no matter what, if you got a bend in the line, or if you got a straight line going to the bobber, it still goes to the bobber, but then it goes down. So that leaves a bow in the line from the bobber, from your line to the bobber. That's not straight. It's like an L or whatever.
When you lift up on it, it's straightening the bobber out.
Yeah. So there's a lot to think of, but then there's been times out there where I think when I was first with you, this happened too. Is that sometimes you'd do everything perfect. The bobber goes down, you got and no fish, and you go, what the heck's going on here? So then there was times where we were counting to like 20 before you set the hook, and I don't know why that is. It's like they grab it, they hold it, and it takes them longer to eat it. Those are in the finicky days. So yeah, it's a little. Sometimes you gotta wait, but you figure that out. But most times, if you're slow rolling that or moving it, and they grab it, it's all like them. They got to catch it kind of, and they just open their mouth and inhale it. Or if you're doing the snap thing, it's going up and it's falling, and then they want to open their mouth and suck it in.
Yeah, most of the time they suck everything in when they're eating it, and I think if they're not real active, they just maybe only get part of the minnow in or whatever.
Spit it out?
Yeah, they just get the tail end of it. But that's why with the hook, you're more apt to hook them deeper, because with the weight of the jig, that kind of slows down it going into their mouth when they kind of inhale it, and it don't go quite so far back in, where the hook will go way back in.
Yeah, and that actually is a pain in the butt, because then you got to sit there and take the time to dig the hook out. The fish is probably dead.
Well, folks, we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that bring this show to you every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk we had with Hayward Area Fishing Guide Tim Duffy. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
If you'd like to have your time fishing be more enjoyable and productive, hiring a fishing guide can be a good investment. Whether it's learning more about fish patterns throughout the year, learning how to use your depth finder to find the best spots and fish, learn how to use that GPS to get the most out of it, or learn better boat control. A day on the water with a guide can really help you to be a better angler, as well as make a day on the lake very enjoyable. To book a guide trip this year or get more information, you can find us on the internet at www.wiscnorthlandoutdoors.com, and then just click on Area Guides.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk we had with Hayward Area Fishing Guide Tim Duffy about spring fishing.
Now let's talk a little about northern pike. I know one of the things you'd fish for a lot is northern pike. When will you start going after the pike? And I know you like to troll for them.
Well, I might go opening day, that opening weekend, because, there's plenty of time for walleye, and there's the boat landings will be pretty busy with people, and it's a great time to go for northerns opening weekend, because they're probably done spawning, but they're still coming out of those bay areas, and it's one of the few times where you can get the big fish. A lot of people think the little fish tend to stay like in the summertime. The little fish tend to be shallower, not always, but mostly stay shallower, and those big fish, they like cold water. And they'll go out in the deepest water, and we see this trolling. We keep dropping the baits down, and we'll be in the middle of the lake, and we're fishing down near the bottom for the northerns where the muskie's up high. But the opener weekend, when the water's cold, the northerns don't mind it at all.
Right.
And so I might try up in the slop to see if they're up in there in the shallow water, but normally they're out, 5 feet you can find them, and depending on the lake, the one that I fish, there is some weed growth there, but it's really nice because the weed growth isn't very high, and the northerns just tend to pile up, and it's a lot of fun. But you can get big ones because they're still kind of in that area. So yeah, you just get a mixed bag, but you usually get a lot of action. Where you don't have to worry about it. The water's too cold. They're gonna be finicky like that. Just seems to be good.
And the trolling, you kind of leave till you the fish. You go out in the deeper water where you're looking for them deeper.
Yeah, unless well, I guess we've trolled in that, if you come out of those bays, and it actually works really well then too, when the water's cold. If you're out in like 5-6 foot of water and the weed growth isn't really up, which it probably won't be, you can actually troll through those areas, and it doesn't seem to affect the fish at all, and still catch them that way. That's the nice thing about we've done both. We cast and see where they're at, and then we've actually went in there when the water is cold and trolled for those fish, and the cold water, they love that, so it's like they'll still bite like artificial. Trolling or casting, either way. Once you find where they're at, the trolling seems to be a little bit more productive because you're just going back and forth over the spots, and so I might do that on the opening weekend because it works, and there's not a lot of stuff to get snagged up on, and you're in the shallower water. They tend to be in that maybe 5-8 foot of water on the lakes, the smaller lakes that I fish for the northerns.
Yeah. If they're up in the weeds and real shallow, even topwater baits work off.
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen this in the fall and in the springtime. And the fall lake, we talk about muskie fishing.
Right. The big fish are up shallow,
and the lakes are turning over, and we'll go in those shallow, sloppy bays. And you can't throw nothing in there because it's so shallow. And so the only thing you can throw is top water, and it's snowing out, or it's springtime, it's cooler out, but you only got a foot of water. So it's like top water or underwater doesn't really matter. To them, it's right in their face, and they're going to hit it. So we've seen that many times, fall or springtime for top water. So you just got to kind of see where they're at and what kind of technique's going to work for catching them. The nice thing is the older you get, maybe you just have more ideas of what to do quicker and faster, to switch to something. But my first thing is I get on the lake and I'll look at my temperature gauge, and I'll drive around and find out, but just by looking, what I see, because you get in the shallow water, if those fish are in there, they take off, you're going to see swirls and stuff like that. And if they're out in little deep water, I just, do a few fan casts, just like we're talking about with the slip bobbers, to find out where they're at. Nothing. A lot of times I don't even shut my motor off. I keep it running, and then I'll move over a little bit, take a few casts. But we kind of know where to go and where to look. The other thing is the north side of the lake warms up faster than the south side of the lake, warmer water. And so that will help you out if you're fishing for a lot of species like crappies, bluegills, the walleyes. They tend to want to go towards the warmer water, even if they're not shallow. The nice thing is so we're talking about that 67, 68, those degrees of water. If you got a big lake like Grindstone or Coudray or Round Lake or whatever, and you run over to fish the warmer water. Well, then by the time that warmer water gets up into the 70 range, well, then just go to the other side of the lake. And that's back at usually in the 67, 68. So you almost get a double whammy, but knowing when to get out of that, when it gets too warm, to go to the other side of the lake on those big lakes, those clear water lakes, and that water will be in the kill zone still.
You bet.
So, yeah, a lot.
Water temperature gauge is the most important thing you got in the spring.
It is. I guess, even like we're talking about the walleyes and the spawning and fishing those near the spawning areas, off the spawning areas in the daytime on the cribs, that still all regulates to water temperature because they only spawn when the water is a certain degree. Trout, salmon, whatever. So, we're wondering like, okay, we're going to be pre-spawn, post-spawn, this, whatever. That's where your water temperature comes into play. Like, okay, are they going to be done spawning or whatever? So the water temperature is always very important. I can remember fishing without it, and it's like now I couldn't go out there because it's really important to know that what the water temperature is going to be.
That's it. Well, a lot of great information there, Tim. How does somebody get a hold of you if they want a guide?
They can call me at 715-699-6016.
And you also have a webpage on Google. Just Google Tim Duffy Guide Service.
Yeah, Big John. He'll find me.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, John.
Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, go to our website at wnoradio.com. From there, you can link to our podcast site, and the show is also on Spotify and Google Podcasts every week. And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com. Thanks for listening, folks. We're out of time, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you.
Listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin outdoors, our Wisconsin outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications. Any and all views expressed are not necessarily those of the station.